What's going on guys, Mirai here, back again with another Genshin Impact video, and today we are going to be going through Xiao, a new 5-star character that is confirmed to come to Genshin in update 1.3. So first up, just some basic info about him. He is an Anemo polearm user, and his base stat as he levels up is going to be crit rate %, and for his ascension materials, he requires Qingsing, Slime Concentrate, and a new item called Juvenile Jade, which drops from the new monster Primogeo Vishar. So it does seem like we won't be able to immediately max him out, but we'll try our best to do so. If you guys are preparing to pull for him though, I highly suggest that you guys start farming the Qingsings because those are really not easy to find. Anyways, let's move on to his skills. For his normal attack, he performs 6 consecutive spear strikes, nothing too special there. The interesting part about this though is the plunging attack. As a passive, Xiao does not take damage from performing plunging attacks no matter how high he plunges from. It's also mentioned in the Chinese livestream that the higher you plunge from, the more damage you will deal. You could plunge from the floating island in Liyue all the way down and he will not take any damage. Pretty interesting, right? Next, we get to his elemental skill, Lemniscatic Wind Cycling. Xiao lunges forward, dealing Anemo damage to opponents in his path. It can be used in mid-air and it starts with 2 charges, 3 if you get to Constellation 1. So this is a very basic dash skill and it makes Xiao very agile in the battlefield, especially if you have him at Constellation 1. He also gets additional damage on subsequent dash charges, which I'll cover during the talents in a bit. Next up, we have the Elemental Burst. Xiao dons the Yaksha mask, greatly increasing his jumping ability, attack AoE, and attack damage. It also converts attack damage to Anemo damage, which cannot be overridden by any other elemental infusion. In this state though, Xiao will continuously lose HP, and as you can see from the levels, at a healthy level 7 on this skill, you will lose 2% current HP per second. This is huge because current HP isn't that bad compared to max HP. With that being said though, I would still recommend you put a healer on the team, which we'll get to in a bit during the team composition part. For his passive talents, the first one is that Xiao decreases climbing stamina consumption by 20% for your party members. I think this is going to be good for those who are still exploring Liyue, because damn, that place has a lot of cliffs. Anyway, moving on to his level 20 talent, while under the effects of his elemental burst, all damage dealt by Xiao increases by 5%, and the damage increases by a further 5% for every 3 seconds that the ability persists. The maximum damage bonus is 25%. So to break down this talent a little bit further, his burst lasts for 15 seconds. You will continuously have a 5% boost to his damage every 3 seconds, which means he will only deal that sweet 25% damage during the last 3 seconds of his burst, so do keep in mind not to preemptively switch him out when he has his burst up. Lastly, for his level 70 passive, using his elemental skill increases the damage of subsequent uses of his elemental skill by 15%. So if you have 3 charges, it'll be pretty good, but if you only have 2 charges, it might not be too useful. Next, we get into his constellations. Like I've mentioned just now, Constellation 1 gives you more charge of his elemental skill, which I think is a really good perk for Xiao, so for those Xiao mains out there, you might want to get Constellation 1 on him. His Constellation 2 gives him 25% energy recharge when he's not on the field, which is decent at best. With Constellation 1, you get an additional charge of E, so I don't really see why he needs more energy recharge when he's off the field, but I guess we'll find out when he drops. Moving on to Constellation 4, when Xiao's HP falls below 50%, he gains a 100% defense bonus. A very defensive constellation in my opinion, but let's be honest, with a healer like TT or even Barbara, the effects of his Q is pretty much negated, so not a fan of this constellation as well. Lastly, in Constellation 6, while under the effects of his Q, hitting at least 2 opponents with Xiao's plunging attacks will immediately grant him 1 charge of his E, and for the next 1 second he may use his E while ignoring its cooldown. In my opinion, this is pretty good and really interesting, but like I've mentioned countless times before, I do not recommend getting Constellation 6 on any 5-star character because it's just too expensive. Alright, next let's move on to his builds. For Xiao's weapons, the Primordial Jade Wing Spear is definitely the best weapon for him. You can even see him holding it in the trailer during the update 1.3 livestream. It gives him crit damage, attack increase, and even a damage increase. Pair this up with a crit damage circlet and you'll be dishing out tons of damage. I fully expect this spear to be the weapon banner once he drops. But let's come back to Earth, and for the free-to-play friends out there that may not have saved enough for both Xiao and his weapon, or you got unlucky and didn't manage to get the weapon, there's 4-star weapon options out there. For Xiao, there's 2 good 4-star weapons for you to consider. However, they both come at a price. The first one is the Deathmatch, which works a little similarly to the Primordial Jade Wing Spear, and this is really good on Xiao as well. The other spear that I could recommend is the Black Cliff Pole, which is in Paimon's shop right now till the end of the month, so if you don't have the deathmatch, you could grab this as well. I've actually done my own research, and to be honest, they're both equally good, but I prefer the deathmatch as it will give me a solid crit rate and I will be able to build crit damage on his circlet. Next, we get to his artifacts. So in my opinion, the artifact set that will allow him to do the most damage will be the 2-piece Viridescent set and the 2-piece Gladiator set. This gives his Anemo damage a good boost, and in his Q, he will be able to make use of that extra 18% attack from the Gladiator set by converting it into Anemo damage. However, do take this with a pinch of salt because right now he isn't released yet and I do want to try out more artifacts on him, so do make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss my live stream as we test him out. Lastly, we get to his team composition. Xiao is an Anemo DPS, so he would be fine in just about any team as long as you have a decent healer to take care of his Q's self-damage. A special mention for Xiao's support DPS would be Albedo, especially if you have Constellation 4 on him. Albedo's Constellation 4 actually increases plunging damage within the radius of his elemental skill, which is going to be huge for Xiao. But even if you don't have Constellation 4 on Albedo, he's still a really good support for Xiao because of the amount of passive damage that he is able to output. If you manage to get crystallized on Albedo's E, it also gives Xiao a little bit more tankiness so he doesn't take too much damage. Of course, the platform will be very nice for his plunging attacks as well. Another good support will be Xingqiu, as he is just a generally good unit for mitigating damage, dealing damage, and also healing for Xiao. Next, we definitely do need a healer, and in this case, Qiqi and Barbara would be pretty good picks because of their consistent healing without the need of Elemental Burst. However, I do think that even Diona or Jean would be able to do the job decently. The last mention here would be Bennett. Although he doesn't heal as much as the other units mentioned here, he does offer a lot of extra damage boost on his Q. So if you are able to stand within his Q and spam plunging attacks while on Xiao's Q, I do assume you will be able to maintain your health at a decent 70% and dish out a lot of damage. So in conclusion, I do feel like Xiao is going to be a very fun character for me personally because I love characters that are agile like him, so I'm pretty sure I will like him. With that being said though, his kit is pretty basic and I don't feel like it will be difficult for anyone to just pick him up and use him. I also don't think that he's super constellation heavy, as I do think that most of his constellations are more quality of life rather than DPS oriented, so that's a really good news for free-to-play players. The only constellation that I do recommend will be Constellation 1, which depending on your Primogem situation might not be impossible. So anyway, that's going to be it for my Xiao guide. I do hope that this video has helped you guys. If you don't want to miss me pulling for Xiao and testing him out, do definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel and click on that bell button. That's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!